So, Craig, before we go into the questions, at Crafters Company we've got a number of different ink pads, and in the crafting world there's different inks. What are the different inks that we've got?
Rightio. So yeah, we'll have a lovely variety that all serves a purpose when it comes to each of the craft that you are doing, whether it is just colouring, whether it is backdrops. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at kind of like the two main ones very briefly when it comes to colouring, and then the kind of three kind of top, kind of like the famous ones that we do at Crafters Companion. And that is when it comes to colouring, what we've got is we've got our alcohol proof ink pad here. Really easy to distinguish because it has an alcohol pen on the front here. Now stock dependent, George, what we do have is Noir Black, Flagstone and Pebble. So anything alcohol colouring wise, alcohol base, you're going to be using your alcohol proof ink pad. When it comes to anything that's water-based colouring, whether of course it's aqua pens, sparkle pens, anything like that, you're going to want to use your waterproof ink pad. That one, it tells you waterproof, and then it's got a paintbrush that you could be using with water. That also comes available, stock dependent, in your Flagstone, your Pebble, rustic brown, as well as the Noir Black. So these two, stamping and colouring, are the two main ones that you'll always be using. With the three top ink pads, our kind of the ones that we started with at Crafters Companion are these three here. You've got a quick dry, a water reactive, and then a pigment. That one, exactly as it says, it dries really quick. So sentiment, layering stamps, layering stencils, that's a good one. And it's got a picture of layered flower there from the stencil. Water reactive, that one there, visually it tells you when it comes to the blending tool, good to do in all the blended backgrounds. You can do all your water techniques. So you've got your water reactive, and then what you've got is your pigment one. This is one that stays open longer, or i.e. stays sticky longer. So it's really good to put all your different embossing powders. We do then go into the world of our colour blooms, our duets, our metallic ink pads and that as well. But when it comes to the three main ones that so many of us go back to time and time again, those are the three main ones.
Absolutely. Right, let's get into these questions. Loads of questions, and thank you for getting in touch. Cindy Thompson, what ink pads do you use with Aqua pens?
Right. When it comes to your aqua pens, this is where I'm going to say your aqua pens are anything that is water-based. If you're then going to be using the stamp to colour in with, of course, your aqua pens, this is where, George, you're going to come in with your waterproof ink pad.
Yeah.
Now, if you're using your aqua pens to do backdrops, then, of course, you won't need an ink pad. But if you're wanting to stamp out your stamps and then colour those in with, of course, an aqua pen or a sparkle pen or maybe your shimmer pads, anything like that, then this is where you need to stamp with a waterproof ink pad. This one being the waterproof, it tells you waterproof, and it's also got a picture of a paintbrush in water. So anything like your aqua pens is going to be your waterproof ink pad.
Perfect. Rebecca asks, can you go through how to get the best from the Colour Bloom ink pads?
Now, when it comes to the colour bloom, what you want to do is you want to treat them, essentially, what you want to do is treat them exactly the same way as you would do with your water reactive ink pad. So whether, of course, it's water techniques, whether it's going in with the blending techniques, whatever you already do and love to do with your water reactive techniques, you're going to come along and you're going to do with your colour bloom. The difference with the colour bloom is when you spritz them or activate them with water, they're going to have that bit of a colour change. Now, some of the colours might change, you know, really quite strongly. Some of them might be subtle. But whatever you do with your water reactive, the best advice I can give you is use them the same way the colour bloom. The difference is, activate it with water, the colour bloom will change colour.
Perfect. Thank you for those questions. A few very similar questions on this. So, Nina's asking, I've got a couple of duplicates. Will those I have stored away stay juicy for a while? And the wonderful Jeannie's asking, Craig, how long do ink pads usually last?
Gosh, one depends on how many times you use your ink pads will depend on how long they last. I have been with Crafters Companion just over 6 years now, and I have had my water reactive and my quick dry since the beginning. I then got my pigment ink pads maybe about a year or so in. I've not had to replace one of them at all. not one of them. Now, my water reactive, some of them are starting to get a little bit kind of less intense when it comes to the colour. So a couple of things here. If you duplicate, or if you've got extras that you're not using at the moment, just make sure that they're stored in a cool place, out of sunlight, then they're going to be absolutely fine. They're going to last you such a long time till you need to come and use them. If you find after so many years that they're starting to dry out, maybe things such as your water reactive and that, what I would suggest then is turn them over. Now, when it comes to storing them, all of your ink pads on the trays, you're going to be storing upwards. So you're going to be storing them, George, with the logo sticker facing upwards. So if I take that off, you've then got that sponge, that mat of your ink pad on the top. Now, over time, and I mean like a good number of years, as I say, 6 years, and I've not had to replace any of mine. If you do find that they're starting to get a little bit less juicy, what to do is store them upside down.
Right.
Store them upside down. That will then pull all the ink to the top of the mat there, and then that's going to reinvigorate them and make them juicy again. But yeah, 6 and a bit years, that gives you a good indication of how long that they will last.
It really does, that's incredible. Evelyn asks, I have some colours of the water reactive ink pads and some complementary colours of the quick dry ink pads. Can they be used together?
Now, using your water reactive and your quick dry together, that is a really good question, because go to water reactive opens the doors for anything and everything technique-wise. This is why they're one of my favourite, or if not my favourite ink pad to be using. Quick dry, being of course the title, quick dry. A lot of people think that all you can do is stamp with them to get that quick impression. So what I mean by that is, let's just bring my stamping platform in here. Now, I'm just going to take a piece of card. Now, I'm just going to go in with a piece of card here, George. I'm just going to press that down. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in, I've just grabbed a stamp, any stamp, and I'm going to go in with this teapot here. So you can see it's a good sizable stamp. Then what I'm also going to do is I'm going to go in with the honey pot yellow, because if anything is going to show any smudging or smearing, it is a yellow. It's my quick dry one. So if I bring that in, stamp that, turn this around, I'm going to then ink up like so, and I'm going to do this as quick as I can, and then just make sure my finger's not dirty. Now look at that. That is how quick it is. Doesn't smudge, doesn't smear.
Incredible.
So that's what a lot of people think you can only use the quick dries for. But you can, technically, you can, if you want to, do a little bit of watercolouring. As long as you're putting them, George, on a non-porous surface, like a glass mat or a tile or a laminated sheet, you can pick them up and watercolour with them.
Amazing.
The only thing is, once that connects with the cardstock, it's dry.
Right.
So you can start to then do water-based techniques with your water reactive, then you can come along and watercolour with your quick dries if you want to. So you can use them together.
Perfect. Crafting Queen, which ink pads are best to use on the resist pads, please?
On the resist pad?
Yes.
Any that are water-based. So I'm going to make it really, really easy. The only ones that I really wouldn't use are the quick dry. Other than that, you could pretty much use any of the other ink pads. There is an argument that yes, you could of course use quick dry because the image will then resist the ink, but you need to keep in mind that the matte cardstock that the resists on, that's going to capture your quick dry ink, and it's not going to budge, it's not going to move. So what I would say is have a play all your other ones. Me personally, I always go with either my duet or my water reactive, but really you can go for any of the other ones.
Perfect, thank you for that question. Karen's asked, I forgot, we'll let you off, Karen. What ink pads can be used to lay down on your glass mat and spritz with water to pick up on your cardstock?
Another really, really good question, and really pretty much all of them. All of them you can do that. What you need to keep in mind, if I go back, of course, and in actual fact, let's use this little pool that I've still got from my quick dry. So because this one here, because it's on a non-porous surface, look, I can still move it and smear it because, of course, it is on a non-porous surface. If I go onto my cardstock, that's not budging.
No.
That is not budging. So going and answering your question, if I activate that with, of course, water, then you can still do your techniques.
And it won't budge?
That will budge at the moment, just because it's still a little bit wet.
I see.
But now, that's pretty much soaked into my cardstock. The chance of that moving is very, very slim. So yes, there is that possibility, and definitely that go-to with using your quick dry. In general, what I tend to do is I will do all my backdrops with my water reactive. I'll do them with my duets, the shimmer ink pads, the colour blooms. They're all good to go by. I tend to steer away from my quick dry, but you can, as you can see, you can still dabble in them when it comes to your techniques with the backdrops.
Amazing. I'm learning so much in this. I'm getting really excited. Trudy, which ink is best to use? I'm not calling you Trudy, by the way. Trudy's asked this. Which ink is best to use with heat embossing?
Heat embossing, really, one straight to go to is your pigment ink pads. That is going to be the best one. So that one there is the ones that are kind of in that burgundy packet that you've got here. This is because when we say that this stays open longer or wet, what that just means is that enables your embossing powders to stick to it. Now, what it doesn't do, George, is if I was to go like that with on my card or on with my stamp, it's not sticky as in a glue sticky that is going to stick to my hand. What it will do though is it will attract your fine particles of your embossing powder. So when it comes to your embossing powder and heat embossing, the go-to one, in my opinion, is always going to be your pigment and being your opaque pigment, but you can, if you want to, do that with things like your water reactive and your duet, but my go-to is always the pigment.
Flipping that on its head, Eileen's asked, does pigment ink ever dry if you don't emboss with it?
Pigment inks, they do dry, but they take a while to dry. So because of the nature of the formulation, if they stay open longer, or again, wet longer, that just means that if you are going to be using them in a stamping form or layering with your stencils, etc., they will dry, but you will need to leave them for quite a wee while. So in that aspect, if you want them to dry quicker, heat set them with a heat tool. But yeah, don't worry if you're using them and they are taking a while to dry. Absolutely normal. If you want to speed it up, just use your heat tool.
Pat's asking as well about embossing with ink. Can you emboss with the metallic pigment ink pads?
Yes, you can.
Perfect.
Yes, you can. This is where I go back to pretty much all of the ink pads that are water-based that you can then sprinkle your embossing powder over the top. Embossing, I would steer away from the quick dry, and although my go-to is the pigment, you can absolutely go over with your Midas ink pads and that, stamp with them, and then pop your powders over the top.
Right, last few questions. What is the best ink to use on photo paper?
Photo paper, when it comes to ink to be using on photo paper, it's a good one where you could come along with things such as your colour bloom ink pads. What I would say is the actual ink pads that came out with the photo paper, they are the best ones in my opinion, because of course they've all been launched at the same time. They work well together. But that being said, because it is a photo paper, play and experiment. Go in, do the backdrops, smudge your ink pads into your glass mat, spritz with water, because the difference with your photo paper is, of course, it's got that gloss finish over the top. So once it's dry, you get that nice little shiny gloss effect. But do you know what? Play and experiment.
Lovely. Another question for you. What's the best ink to use on vellum and gloss cardstock?
Right, another brilliant question. We don't at Crafter's Companion yet, and I'm not saying that as I know something that's coming up, I genuinely don't. At the moment, we don't have an ink pad that works straight onto likes of your vellum and your acetate, like a quick dry. Well, I say quick dry, a stays-on ink pad. We don't have one in our range. Now, the way to work around that is if you're wanting to use your stamps onto vellums or acetate, what you're going to do is you're going to be using, what I would be doing is I would be using my black pigment ink pad, and then I would be doing my embossing. So onto acetate and vellum, ink with my pigment black, sprinkle with my embossing, heat set it, and then that's how you're going to be able to stamp onto vellum and acetate without it smudging or smearing.
Love it. Right, last two questions for you. What's the best ink to use when you use the heat and mould stamping foam?
Read that one out again for
What's
me,
the
please.
best ink to use when you use the heat and mould stamping foam?
Heat and mould stamping foam. Perfect one to be using, water reactive, in my opinion. But this is another one where what you can do is you could be using any of the ink pads that we've got within our range. Me personally, I will tend to steer away again from the quick dry. Other than that, your water reactive, your duets, your shimmer ink pads, all of these you're going to be able to use to get that impression with the moulded pads.
And the final question, Kim's asked, what's the best pads to own? I've got, for me, what's the first time crafting, what's the best pads to own? What would you get first?
First time, first pads to have, in my opinion, water reactive.
Water reactive.
Water reactive, because at the end of the day, you can colour with them, you can blend with them, you can bleach with them, you can stamp with them, you can heat emboss with them as well, you can letterpress with them. For me, that is my ones. I believe Debbie Robinson would maybe say something like the duet. Debbie Fisher loves her absolute pigment ink pads. For me, it's the water reactive.
Ladies and gentlemen, the craft clinic is now closed. Craig, you may lie down after that.